I spent more than 50 years studying success, discipline, and human potential. And one truth has become clearer to me than almost anything else. The biggest obstacle standing between you and the life you want is not the economy, not your boss, not your background, and not your circumstances. It's you. The real battle in life is the battle you fight within yourself every single day. And the moment you learn how to overcome yourself, your doubts, your habits, your excuses, your comfort zone, you immediately move ahead of about 90% of people around you. Now let me ask you a question. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever set a goal, felt motivated, promised yourself you were going to change your life, and then slowly slipped back into old habits? If that's happened to you, you're not alone. It happens to millions of people. But here's what I want you to do right now. Go down to the comments and answer this question honestly. What is the one habit or weakness you feel is holding you back the most right now? Write it down. When you name the obstacle, you begin taking power over it. Let me explain something I've learned after working with top performers, entrepreneurs, executives, and self-made millionaires around the world. The difference between the top 10% and the bottom 90% is not intelligence. It's not luck. And it's not talent. The real difference is self-mastery. The top 10% have learned how to control themselves when they don't feel like it. They act when they don't feel motivated. They stay disciplined when distractions appear. And they keep moving forward even when progress is slow. Most people never develop this ability. That's why they remain stuck. Now here's an important fact. Human beings are naturally wired for comfort. Your brain constantly pushes you toward what is easy, familiar, and safe. It encourages procrastination. It rewards short-term pleasure. And it resists effort, difficulty, and uncertainty. This is not a personal flaw. It's biology. But the people who rise to the top learn something extremely powerful. They train themselves to override this natural programming. They develop the habit of doing what is hard first. They replace emotional decisions with disciplined decisions. And this one shift alone separates high achievers from everyone else. Let me give you a simple truth that changed my life many years ago. Your success in life will be determined by the number of uncomfortable actions you are willing to take. Think about that carefully. Every meaningful improvement in your life lies on the other side of discomfort. Starting the business, learning the skill, waking up earlier, working harder than you feel like, facing rejection, improving your discipline. Most people avoid these things, and because they avoid them, they never experience the rewards on the other side. Overcoming yourself means learning to move toward discomfort instead of away from it. I discovered early in my career that if I simply did what most people refuse to do, my life would improve dramatically. So I began practicing a simple principle. Whenever I faced a choice between what was easy and what was difficult, I trained myself to choose the difficult path, not because it felt good, but because I knew it would make me stronger. At first it wasn't easy. In fact, it felt unnatural. My mind would constantly whisper excuses. Do it later. You deserve a break. You can start tomorrow. But I realized something important. Excuses are the language of average thinking. And every time you accept an excuse, you weaken your ability to lead your own life. When you overcome an excuse, you strengthen it. Think of your self-discipline like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. The less you use it, the weaker it becomes. Every decision you make during the day is either strengthening or weakening your future success. When you wake up and hit snooze repeatedly, you reinforce weakness. When you wake up and get moving immediately, you reinforce strength. When you delay important work, you reinforce procrastination. When you start immediately, you reinforce leadership over yourself. Small decisions shape your identity, and identity shapes your destiny. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that successful individuals are somehow different. They imagine that disciplined people always feel motivated. They believe productive people always feel energetic. But the truth is very different. The most successful individuals often feel the same resistance you do. The difference is simple. They do the work anyway. They act despite their feelings. They understand something extremely powerful. Feelings are temporary. Results are permanent. If you learn to act based on long-term results instead of short-term emotions, you immediately move ahead of the majority. Let me tell you something I often share in my seminars. Every morning when you wake up, You face two invisible forces pulling on your life. One force pulls you toward comfort, distraction, and delay. The other force pulls you toward growth, effort, and achievement. The direction your life takes depends on which force you choose to follow more often. Now here's something very interesting. Research on human productivity consistently shows that the first few hours of your day often determine the quality of your entire day. High achievers understand this deeply. That's why they guard their mornings carefully. They don't begin their day by scrolling endlessly through social media. They don't begin their day reacting to other people's demands. Instead, they begin their day by focusing on progress, reading, planning, thinking, working on their most important goals. And by doing this consistently, they compound small victories into extraordinary long-term results. If you truly want to overcome yourself, start by mastering your mornings. Wake up earlier than necessary. Spend at least 30 minutes investing in your mind. Read something that improves your thinking. Write down your goals. Visualize the person you want to become. This daily habit alone can transform your direction faster than you might imagine. But here's where many people fail. They start with enthusiasm. They feel inspired for a few days. Then life becomes busy. Energy drops. Old habits return. And they quietly abandon the commitment. Why does this happen? Because motivation is unreliable. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline, on the other hand, is dependable. When you build disciplined habits, you no longer rely on emotional energy. You rely on systems. And systems create consistency. For example, instead of saying, I'll work on my goals when I feel motivated, a disciplined person says, I work on my goals every morning at 7, no matter how I feel. That small change transforms everything. You remove negotiation from your mind. You remove excuses. And you remove uncertainty. Over time, disciplined actions become automatic. What once required effort becomes normal. And this is where true personal power begins. Let me ask you something important. Imagine if you improved yourself just 1% every day. 1% more focused. 1% more disciplined. 1% more intentional. Those small improvements would compound into massive change over a year. Yet most people search for dramatic overnight transformation. They want instant success, instant confidence, instant results. But real success works differently. It grows quietly through daily habits, through repeated effort, through small victories that accumulate over time. Overcoming yourself is not a single moment of heroism. It's a daily practice. It's the repeated decision to act like the person you want to become. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you reshape your future. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you expand your potential. And every time you refuse to listen to excuses, again, you move closer to the top 10%. But here is something many people never fully understand. The most dangerous enemy in your life is not failure. Failure can teach you. Failure can strengthen you. Failure can push you toward improvement. The most dangerous enemy is comfort. Comfort convinces you that where you are is good enough. Comfort whispers that change can wait. Comfort slowly steals your ambition without you even noticing. And that is why overcoming yourself is one of the most powerful skills you will ever develop. Because when you conquer comfort, you unlock progress. When you conquer excuses, you unlock discipline. And when you conquer fear, you unlock opportunity. Let me continue with something that may surprise you. Most people believe that discipline is something you either have or you don't. They think it's a personality trait. But after decades of studying successful people, I can tell you that discipline is not something you are born with. It is something you train. Just like a muscle in the gym, self-discipline grows through repeated use. The more often you force yourself to do what is necessary rather than what is comfortable, the stronger your ability becomes. And once that muscle grows strong enough, something remarkable happens. Things that once felt difficult begin to feel normal. Waking up early becomes natural. Working with focus becomes easier. Avoiding distractions becomes automatic. You begin operating on a completely different level from the majority of people. Now, I want to share with you one of the most powerful mental frameworks I've ever learned for overcoming yourself. It's called future orientation. Highly successful people think about the future far more than average individuals do. They constantly ask themselves a simple but powerful question. If I do this action, where will it lead me in the long run? This question alone can change your life. Let's say you're tempted to procrastinate. Instead of acting on the impulse, pause for a moment and ask yourself, if I keep doing this for the next 5 years, where will my life end up? Suddenly, the decision becomes clear. When you constantly evaluate your actions through the lens of the future, your behavior begins to change automatically. You start making decisions that your future self will thank you for. You begin thinking long-term instead of short-term. And long-term thinking is one of the defining traits of the top 10% in every field. Let me give you an example. When most people finish a long day, they reward themselves with hours of passive entertainment. They tell themselves they deserve it. But a future-oriented person asks a different question. What small action can I take tonight that will improve my tomorrow? Maybe it's reading 10 pages of a book. Maybe it's planning the next day. Maybe it's learning a new skill. These small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over months and years, they compound into extraordinary advantages. You see, success is rarely the result of one giant breakthrough. It is the result of hundreds of small, intelligent decisions made consistently over time. Now let me talk about another obstacle that stops millions of people from reaching their potential: self-doubt. Self-doubt is one of the most destructive forces in human psychology. It whispers questions like, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What will people think? And these questions stop people before they even begin. But here is something I learned after working with countless high achievers. Confidence does not come before action. Confidence comes from action. Most people wait until they feel confident before they start something new. But successful people understand that confidence is built through experience. Every time you take action, even imperfect action, you send a message to your brain that says, I am capable. Every time you face a challenge and survive it, your mental strength increases. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is a byproduct of repeated courageous behavior. And this leads me to a principle that has guided much of my life. Act as if. Act as if you already possess the discipline you desire. Act as if you already have the courage you admire. Act as if you are already the person capable of achieving your goals. Because when you begin behaving like that person, your identity gradually shifts to match your actions. Your brain begins accepting the new version of yourself as normal. And identity is incredibly powerful. If you identify as someone who finishes what they start, you will naturally follow through. If you identify as someone who works hard every day, discipline becomes easier. But if you identify as someone who procrastinates or gives up easily, your behavior will continue reinforcing that story. So one of the fastest ways to overcome yourself is to deliberately upgrade the story you tell about who you are. Stop saying things like, I'm not disciplined. I'm bad at consistency. I never stick with things. Every time you repeat those statements, you strengthen them. Instead, begin saying, I am becoming more disciplined every day. I am the type of person who follows through. I am learning to master myself. At first, it may feel unfamiliar. But remember something important. Your mind believes what it hears repeatedly. If you feed it empowering messages consistently, your behavior will gradually align with those beliefs. Now, I want to address another powerful factor that separates the top performers from the rest: clarity. One reason people struggle to overcome themselves is because they lack clear direction. They say they want success, but they don't define what success actually means. They say they want improvement, but they don't define what improvement looks like. Clarity creates focus, and focus creates power. So let me ask you a very direct question. What exactly do you want your life to look like in 5 years? Not vaguely, not emotionally. Specifically, where will you be living? What skills will you have mastered? What kind of work will you be doing? What kind of income will you be earning? What type of person will you have become? When you take the time to answer these questions clearly, something remarkable happens. Your brain begins searching for ways to make that vision real. You begin noticing opportunities that were previously invisible. You begin making decisions that align with that vision. And suddenly, progress becomes easier. One exercise I often recommend is writing down 10 goals you want to accomplish in the next 12 months. Not 3, not 5, 10. Writing goals forces clarity. It forces you to think intentionally about the direction of your life. Then once you've written those goals, choose the one that would have the greatest positive impact if achieved. Focus on that goal every single day. Read it. Visualize it. Work toward it. This level of focus alone will place you ahead of most people because the majority of individuals drift through life without clear targets. They react to circumstances instead of directing their future. Now let me tell you something very important. Overcoming yourself is not about becoming perfect. Perfection is not the goal. Progress is the goal. You will still have days where you feel tired. You will still have moments of doubt. You will still make mistakes. But the key difference between high achievers and everyone else is simple. High achievers recover quickly. They don't allow one bad day to become a bad week. They don't allow one mistake to become a permanent identity. They simply adjust and move forward again. And this resilience is one of the most valuable qualities you can develop, because the path to success is rarely smooth. There will be obstacles. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when progress feels slow. But if you refuse to quit, those obstacles become stepping stones rather than barriers. I often tell people this: persistence is the iron quality of success. The person who persists longer than everyone else eventually wins. Not because they are smarter, not because they are luckier, but because they stayed in the game when others stopped trying. Now here is the interesting part. Persistence becomes easier when you are deeply connected to a meaningful goal. When you know exactly why you are doing something, your ability to endure difficulty increases dramatically. Purpose fuels discipline. Purpose fuels courage. Purpose fuels persistence. That is why discovering your purpose is such an important step in overcoming yourself. Ask yourself, what kind of impact do I want my life to have? What contribution do I want to make? What problem do I want to help solve? When your goals connect to something meaningful, motivation becomes stronger and more sustainable. And this deeper motivation will carry you through moments when discipline alone feels difficult. Now, let me share with you one of the most powerful rules I have ever learned about productivity, discipline, and personal success. It's a rule so simple that most people overlook it, yet the individuals who practice it consistently rise to the very top of their fields. The rule is this: do the most important thing first. Every single day, you wake up with dozens of possible actions competing for your attention. Some are easy, some are comfortable, some are distractions disguised as work. But among all those tasks, there is always one activity that would make the greatest positive impact on your life if you completed it. That is your most important task. And the moment you discipline yourself to start that task immediately, you begin operating like the top 10%. Most people do the opposite. They begin their day with the smallest tasks. They check messages. They scroll through updates. They handle trivial responsibilities. They stay busy all day, yet accomplish very little of real value. But highly effective individuals understand something that average performers rarely recognize. Not all tasks are equal. Some tasks produce 10 times the results of others. And when you learn to focus on high-value activities first, your productivity multiplies dramatically. Let me tell you something I discovered early in my career. When you complete an important task, your brain releases a chemical reward that increases motivation and focus. It gives you momentum. That momentum carries you into the next task with greater energy. But when you delay important work and spend your time on low-value activities, you create the opposite effect. Your mind becomes scattered, your energy drops, and the most meaningful work remains undone. So if you want to overcome yourself, start with this daily habit. Identify the most important task in your day and commit to working on it until it is finished before you allow yourself to do anything else. This single practice can transform your effectiveness more than almost any other strategy I know. Now let me talk about another challenge that silently destroys productivity for millions of people: distraction. We live in a world where attention is constantly under attack. Notifications, messages, endless streams of information. Your attention has become one of the most valuable resources in the modern world. And the people who learn to protect their attention gain a tremendous advantage. If you want to rise above 90% of people, you must become extremely selective about where your focus goes. Because whatever you focus on expands. If you focus on problems all day, your mind becomes filled with stress and frustration. If you focus on growth, solutions, and progress, your mind becomes powerful and creative. So here is a simple discipline I recommend. Create periods of uninterrupted focus in your day. Even 1 hour of concentrated effort without distractions can produce more results than an entire day of scattered attention. Turn off notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Silence interruptions. And give your full mental energy to the task in front of you. You will be amazed at how much progress you can make when your mind is fully engaged. Now, there is another important element to overcoming yourself that many people ignore: your environment. Human behavior is heavily influenced by surroundings. If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, avoid responsibility, and settle for mediocrity, it becomes extremely difficult to rise above that standard. But when you spend time around individuals who value growth, discipline, and achievement, their mindset begins influencing your own. Success leaves clues. The more you expose yourself to people who are striving to improve their lives, the more your own thinking expands. This doesn't mean you must abandon everyone in your life, but it does mean being intentional about the influences you allow into your daily environment. Choose books that challenge your thinking. Listen to conversations that elevate your perspective. Spend time with people who push you to grow rather than pull you back into comfort. Over time, these influences reshape your mindset in powerful ways. Let me share another practice that has transformed the lives of many people I've coached over the years. Daily reflection. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to ask yourself 3 simple questions. What did I do well today? What could I improve tomorrow? What is the most important task for the next day? This short reflection accomplishes something remarkable. It trains your brain to constantly learn, adjust, and improve. Instead of drifting through life unconsciously, you become an active architect of your growth. Every day becomes a small step forward, and these small steps accumulate into extraordinary progress. Now let me tell you something that may sound challenging, but it is absolutely true. If you can master your habits, you can master your life. Your habits determine how you spend your time. Your time determines the quality of your results, and your results determine the direction of your future. Most people allow their habits to form accidentally. They repeat behaviors without questioning them. They follow routines that lead nowhere. But successful individuals design their habits deliberately. They choose routines that move them closer to their goals. They create systems that support discipline. And over time, those systems make success almost inevitable. Think about the habits that shape your daily life right now. Your morning routine, your work habits, your learning habits, your health habits. Are these habits moving you toward the life you want or away from it? Because every habit is either an investment or a cost. Now here is one final truth I want to leave with you. You are far more capable than you realize. Inside every person is a level of strength, discipline, and determination that often remains untapped. Not because it isn't there, but because it has never been demanded. The moment you begin demanding more from yourself, that hidden potential begins to emerge. When you challenge your limits, your capacity expands. When you push through resistance, your confidence grows. When you refuse to settle for mediocrity, your standards rise. And once your standards rise, your entire life begins changing. Remember something very important. Becoming better than 90% of people is not about being superior to others. It's about becoming superior to the person you used to be. It's about waking up each day and choosing growth instead of comfort, choosing discipline instead of excuses, choosing progress instead of stagnation. Every time you make that choice, you move forward. And when you repeat that choice consistently, your life begins transforming in ways that once seemed impossible. So starting today, make a decision to lead yourself, a decision to demand higher standards from your actions, a decision to overcome the habits, fears, and doubts that have been holding you back. Because the moment you take responsibility for mastering yourself, you unlock the door to extraordinary possibilities. And I promise you this. If you consistently practice the principles we discussed today, discipline, focus, clarity, persistence, and daily improvement, you will gradually rise above the majority. Not overnight, but inevitably. Now, before we finish, I'd like to hear from you. What is one action you are going to take today to start overcoming yourself? Write it in the comments below. Commit to it publicly, because the journey toward becoming your best self begins with a single decision followed by consistent action. And remember this, your future is not determined by your past. It is determined by the choices you begin making today.